与您分享独处的幸福心理学，不是被迫的孤独与寂寞，而是主动回来做自己，在一个人时，在群众里也能享受独处的幸福。
I look forward to sharing with you the latest research about how pain is created, how we feel pain coming from our brain, the center of where pain is feelings are originated, and how we can work with that to improve our mental, emotional, physical, and social well-being.
相信大家都有这样的一个体验，那就是当你心情好的时候，你看到身边的人事物都是美好的。但是俗话说，人生不如意之事十之八九。所以，当我们遇到不如意的事情时，如何能够稳住心情，才是活出幸福人生的关键哦。那我们应该怎样做到呢？
本次的讲座透过情绪的起伏、梦境以及内外的冲突，带领大家一起寻找并遇见真实的自己。
And I would like to invite you to join for a free webinar called Thriving During COVID-19, Cultivating Self-Compassion and Developing Resilience, on Sunday, February 23rd from 3 to 4:30 p.m. as part of the Resilience and Wellbeing Summit presented by the University of Tunku Abdul Rahman.
3月8号晚上8点，我将带领一场讲座，叫做“好心情，好幸福”，欢迎大家一起来参与，我们到时见哦。
I'm really looking forward to presenting at the summit. My topic is going to be all about finding balance and cultivating resilience. During this presentation, I'm going to introduce you to this idea that well-being is in fact a skill that can be learned.
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me and see me clearly. Good morning. I welcome all of you to the Resilience and Wellbeing Summit 2022. On this wonderful Friday morning, I would like to announce that our session today will begin at 10 a.m. I truly appreciate each of you for joining us on today's webinar. My name is Gurshina Kaur. You can call me Shina, and I'm your MC for the day. While waiting for our event to begin, allow me to introduce a little bit about our summit. In conjunction with University Tunku Abdul Rahman's 20th anniversary of its founding in Malaysia, we are hosting a remarkable and impressive summit, which is the Resilience and Wellbeing Summit 2022. On side note, I'm glad we are all here today, together with our co-host partners, Body Counseling Center and Journey Within. Our dedicated partner includes Alliance Ilion, Kaohsiung Medical University Positive Psychology Center, Taiwan Mindfulness Association, Taiwan Association for Caring and Counseling for Loss, Malaysia Xiao En Group Counseling and Support, Lifeline Association Malaysia, Malaysia Mindfulness Association, Tan Siang Mitra Welfare Association Penang, Inner Journey Academy, Rocco Films, and Sinchiu Delhi. The duration of our summit is from 20th of February to 31st of March this year. For the next few weeks, we will be covering various topics under the themes of resilience and well-being. This week's sharing is on developing awareness and resilience skills to endure hardships. Over the next 3 weeks, we have more to come. This summit will bring you speakers from around the world, which include mental health specialists, psychiatrists, neuroscientists, psychologists, counselors, and mind training practitioners to provide the insights on mental well-being and strengthening resilience. So to benefit more people, please feel free to share about our Facebook Live with your friends and families. Please like our Facebook page for further updates. You can find the link from our chat box. So looking at the time, it's 10 a.m. now. So to all the audience today, we truly appreciate you for joining our talk on well-being is a skill. So just a little housekeeping rules before we get started. You are not allowed to perform any recording throughout the session. Our chat box will be closed throughout the session. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel. Your cooperation is highly appreciated. Now, I will be introducing our esteemed moderator. Professor Yu Hong Tat obtained his Bachelor of Engineering degree in Electrical Engineering from University of Malaya, Malaysia. Masters of Science degree in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science from MIT, USA, and PhD degree from Multimedia University, Malaysia. His working experiences are from various fields. He is currently the president of UTA and also a senior professor of Lee Kong Chan Faculty of Engineering and Science of UTA. He received multiple awards. One of them includes the Torres Science and Technology Award by Malaysian Torres Science Foundation in 2011. He is currently a Fellow of Academy of Sciences Malaysia, Fellow and General Secretary General of Asian Academy of Engineering and Technology, Chair of IEEE Geoscience and Remote Sensing Society Malaysia Chapter, Chairman of Science, Technology and Innovations Consultative Committee of ACCCIM, Education Counselor, and Regional Chair of MIT Educational Council. So, it is with special excitement that I am pleased to welcome Prof. Dr. Yu Hong Tat as the moderator of this session. Prof. Yu, the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thank you to our MC, Sheena. Thank you. And a very good evening to Professor Davidson. Thank you for joining us, and good morning to everyone who actually joined us today. So today, I think we are very honored to be able to invite our keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Richard Davidson, to join us and to speak to us on this title, Well-Being is a Skill. Now, Professor Richard Davidson is the William James and Vilas Research Professor of Psychology and Psychiatry and founder and director of the Center for Healthy Minds, University of Wisconsin-Madison. He is also the founder and chief visionary for Healthy Minds Innovation. Professor Davidson received his PhD from Harvard University in psychology in 1976. His research is broadly focused on the neural basis of emotion and emotional styles and methods to promote human flourishing, including meditation and related contemplative practices. He has published over 440 articles, numerous chapters and reviews, and edited 14 books. He is the author with Sharon Beckery of The Emotional Life of Your Brain, published in 2012, and co-author with Daniel Goleman of Author Traits, published in 2017. I personally have also read the book Author Trait and would like to recommend strongly to every one of you to read it. He was named one of the 100 most influential people in the world by Time magazine in 2006. He was elected to the National Academy of Medicine in 2017 and appointed to the governing board of UNESCO Mahatma Gandhi Institute of Education for Peace and Sustainable Development in 2018. In 2014, Professor Davidson founded the non-profit Healthy Minds Innovations, which translates science into tools to cultivate and measure well-being. Okay, without further ado, we'd like to invite Professor Davidson to actually give us your presentation and talk today. Thank you very much, Professor Davidson.
Thank you so much. And it is really an honor to be with you. I really appreciate the invitation and happy to join my Malaysian colleagues. And at some point, I would love to come visit. I've never been to Malaysia, and
most welcome.
Thank you. So I would like to today describe the journey we've been on that led us to this very simple conclusion, but we think very radical conclusion that well-being is best regarded as a skill that can be cultivated. I am a neuroscientist by training, and in the early part of my career, I was focused on one particular question, which is still very relevant to the work we do today. And that question is, why is it that some people are more vulnerable to the stresses of life, to the challenges of life, and why are other people more resilient? And in the early days of my career, I focused a lot on the adversity side of the equation. I focused a lot on the brain mechanisms that were associated with vulnerability to depression and anxiety and stress. And in 1992, I had the honor of first meeting the Dalai Lama, who challenged me on that day and asked why I couldn't investigate more positive qualities with the same neuroscientific tools, qualities like kindness and like compassion. And we began to turn our attention to those qualities, and that led to the formation of our Center for Healthy Minds, where a lot of the basic research unfolds. And then a little bit later, as was mentioned in the introduction, to a nonprofit company that is taking the insights from the science and turning them into tools that can be used to measure and cultivate well-being. So I'd like to now share with you some slides where I can help to tell this picture in a little bit more detail. So let me see if I can find this. Hold on just one second. I have too many windows open on my computer. Here we go. Okay, can you see that now?
Yeah, we can see your slide.
Okay, perfect. So this is a photograph of the Dalai Lama visiting our lab in 2001, where he was learning about brain imaging, and just an inspirational slide. And I want to begin with this notion that there really is an urgent need. There is a crisis of well-being on this planet today, and it's having devastating and interdependent consequences. And I'm sure you all are familiar with data that is relevant to this broad claim. Let me show you a few important pieces of those data. This is just illustrating the distractibility. This is rates of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. This is in the United States over a 10-year period, showing that the rates of ADHD are progressively increasing over this period.
Professor Davidson, we are not seeing the slides of the subsequent slide, so we only see the cover slide.
I don't know. Let me try again. I don't know why. And if not, I'm going to do this without slides because that's okay too. Hold on one second. Are you seeing the next slide now? No?
Yeah, we are seeing it in a, this is like a slideshow kind of format.
So you're not seeing it in full screen?
Yeah, not full screen, but we can see that now you're showing slide 4.
Okay. Let me just see if there is a way. I'm gonna just stop sharing, and I will present this without slides. It will be just fine that way. So let me go back to this issue of well-being as an urgent public health need. In the United States, the rates of attention deficit disorder are skyrocketing, and this is true in many parts of the world. We also know that the rates of loneliness across the entire world are extraordinarily high, and loneliness is more than twofold the risk factor for mortality compared to obesity. So this is a characteristic that gets under the skin and affects our biology in ways that are consequential for our health. In a paper that appeared very recently in Lancet, the International Medical Journal, comparing the rates of anxiety and depression pre-COVID and during COVID, we know in every country in the world in which this has been examined, the rates of depression and anxiety during COVID have increased, and in certain cases, in certain countries, they have increased by more than 30%, really dramatic increases. And so there is a devastating crisis of well-being that exists on the planet today. We also know that strategies for increasing happiness and well-being that are based on material consumption do not seem to work. And so just to give one example, in the United States, we know that there has been a steady increase in the gross domestic product of the United States over the last 50 years. However, there has not been a corresponding increase in well-being. The level of national well-being has been absolutely flat. And so the increased economic success is not accompanied by increased well-being within the country. And this is true, again, of every country in which these characteristics have been examined. Once a person is over a certain minimal level of income. So it's not to say that income doesn't affect well-being. It does, but it very quickly reaches an asymptote above which it doesn't produce any further benefit. So our well-being is really in rapid decline, and well-being really matters. In a study that was published very recently across 151 countries throughout the world, the average well-being of the country is highly correlated with the life expectancy in that country. Countries that have higher levels of well-being also have higher levels of life expectancy. And so we know that these are associated. It doesn't mean that increased well-being causes increased longevity, but it does raise the question as to whether cultivating well-being may actually be beneficial for our physical health, and increasing evidence suggests that it is. So I've shown you a lot of data, or I've talked about a lot of data that describe the extraordinary problems that we have on the planet today, problems with distractibility, with loneliness, with depression, and one of the important elements that we have learned through our scientific research is that all of these problems, and if we include climate change, the political and war conflicts that we have that are devastating on the planet today, this is really a cause for a lot of pessimism and hopelessness. And one of the really important lessons that we learn from this science is that having a vision of another way of being, a way of being in which people are flourishing, where kindness, appreciation, gratitude, those kinds of qualities are expressed, is really important in helping us to navigate the crisis that we're in. In the United States, during the peak of the civil rights conflicts in the 1960s, when Martin Luther King, the very famous civil rights leader, was living, he gave a famous speech in Washington when race relations in the United States were at an all-time low. And the title of his speech was not, "I Have a Nightmare." The title of his speech was, "I Have a Dream." And having a dream about what is possible, having a dream about a different way of being, is essential in helping people to flourish. And it's not that hard to envision these alternative possibilities. So one of the really important lessons that we have learned in modern science, and particularly modern neuroscience, concerns neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is the idea that the brain can change in response to experience and can change in response to training. The brain is constantly changing. It's constantly being shaped by forces around us. Most of the time, we are unaware of those forces. And most of the time, we have very little control over those forces. And much of the time, those external influences are causes of suffering. And they change the brain. And the very same mechanisms that underlie suffering can be harnessed for the good. We can harness the capacity of our brains to change. And it turns out that there is a really extraordinary kind of finding, which has now been replicated time and again, that shows that when we cultivate positive qualities of our mind, our brains change. And the changes that occur in our brains are changes that enable these positive qualities to endure, to persist over time. This is something that is really so important. And we can actually produce more specific changes in our brain through simple behavioral and mental exercises than we can through any known pharmaceutical. Pharmaceutical interventions are very blunt instruments. The reason they produce side effects is because they're affecting many different parts of the brain. It's like hammering the brain or bathing the brain in a particular molecule. But in order to achieve more specific biological effects, we can actually train our brain through changing our mind, through transforming our mind, through mental exercise. And this is really the crux of what I will share with you in my evening, your morning. So let me say a little bit more about that. We, a few years ago, published a paper that presents a framework for understanding what we think of as the plasticity of well-being. And this is, of course, the idea that well-being is not fixed, it actually can be nurtured. And one of the things that we're fond of saying is that human beings are born to flourish. We're born with a propensity to actualize our potential as human beings. And every human being has the capacity to flourish, has the capacity to express well-being. But in order to do so, it needs to be nurtured. Just like every human being is born with a capacity for language. But in order for us to learn language, to express language, we need to be raised in a normal linguistic community. So this is something very important and underlies this framework for understanding well-being that we've developed. So I'd like to share this framework with you now. The framework holds that there are 4 key pillars of well-being. And each of these pillars is a critical, important constituent, component of well-being. And in order to flourish, we need all 4 of these components. So what are these? The first component we call awareness. And this is our capacity to regulate our attention, our capacity to focus. And it also includes a capacity that neuroscientists and psychologists call meta-awareness. Meta-awareness is the capacity to know what our minds are doing. Now, that may seem a little bit strange. Don't we all know what our minds are doing? Well, how many of you have ever had the experience of reading a book where you might be reading each word on a page, and you might be reading one page, another page, and after a few minutes, you realize that you have no idea what you've just read. Your mind is somewhere else. That's an example of not knowing what our minds are doing. And the moment we recognize that is a moment of meta-awareness, and we can bring our minds back to the task at hand, back to the present moment. So that's something really important. And it turns out that there are now hundreds of studies which show that the capacity for awareness can be trained, and trained quite easily. And this can improve our capacity to focus our attention and can improve our capacity to exhibit meta-awareness. And one of the things that we have done in our center is to extend this work to children. The training of awareness in children is so important because attention is the building block for all other forms of learning. If a child is not attending to what is being presented to him or her, they will not learn that material. And so this is something that we believe is important to incorporate into our educational curricula. And in fact, we've designed a mindfulness-based kindness curriculum for preschool children. Anyone who's interested can go to our website to learn more about it, and we have offered it freely. It's available in English and Spanish. I wish it were in other languages, but it is now being used in about 35,000 schools in different parts of the world. So the second pillar of well-being is connection. Connection includes qualities that are important for healthy social relationships. Qualities like appreciation and gratitude and kindness, compassion. All of these qualities can be enhanced through training. And research shows that it doesn't take much. We have, for example, conducted a randomized controlled trial, the kind of gold standard of clinical research, where we randomly assign people who've never meditated before, and we teach them a simple form of compassion training. And another group, we can teach a simple form of cognitive therapy to teach them to reappraise the causes of negative events, which is a strategy to improve well-being. And we look at the impact of these different kinds of training on the brain and on behavior. And it turns out that just 2 weeks of compassion training for about 30 minutes a day, a total of 7 hours, is sufficient to produce a measurable change in the brain. We scan people in the MRI scanner before and after 2 weeks of training, and we also administer behavioral tasks to enable us to measure pro-social or altruistic behavior. And people behave more altruistically after just 2 weeks of compassion training, and their brains change in a corresponding way. And the magnitude that their brains change in circuits that are important for taking the perspective of another and for positive emotion, the extent to which the brain changes predicts the extent to which people behave more altruistically after this 2-week compassion intervention. So it doesn't take much to get these circuits in the brain going and to enhance these skills that we all have some capacity for. So the third pillar of well-being we call insight. And insight is, oh, thank you. Someone is showing this slide. Very good. Appreciate that. The third pillar of well-being is insight. And insight is about a curiosity-driven self-knowledge. We all have a narrative about ourselves. And this narrative is what our minds do. It's very natural. And we know that at one end of a continuum, there are people who have a very negative narrative. They have negative self-beliefs. And that is a prescription for depression. And what's so important for well-being is not so much changing the narrative, but it is changing our relationship to this narrative. Really important. And again, that can be taught. We can learn to do that through simple mental exercises. And finally, the fourth pillar of well-being is purpose. And purpose is about staying motivated. It's about clarifying our values and our sense of direction in life. And it's not so much about changing our activities to do something more purposeful, but rather how can we find meaning and purpose in that which we are already doing? Really important. In a study that we did during COVID with public school teachers here in the United States, we taught them each of these four pillars of well-being, which, by the way, is available to be taught in the form of an app that we call the Healthy Minds Program. Unfortunately, it's only available in English now, but it is available all over the world. So you can download it wherever you get apps. Again, it's called the Healthy Minds Program, and it's completely free. And if you're interested, please check it out. And you can find practices in the Healthy Minds Program to cultivate each of these four pillars of well-being. So we used this app in this research we did with public school teachers, and we trained them for 30 days. And it turns out that they were only doing practices an average of 5 minutes a day. And yet 5 minutes a day for 30 days was sufficient to produce robust changes on standardized measures of depression, anxiety, and stress, and also significantly improved standardized measures of well-being. And one of the things the teachers said to us is that perhaps the most important thing that they learned is that they reconnected to their sense of purpose in becoming teachers in the first place. They had lost their connection to this sense of purpose during COVID. And this was key to them being able to express this kind of resilience and vitality after they went through this training. So again, these are the 4 pillars of well-being: awareness, connection, insight, and purpose. And all 4 of these are really important for flourishing. So this is not a mindfulness program. Mindfulness is included in the awareness pillar. It's one of 4 elements, but I often say it would be like going to the gym and just strengthening your upper body and ignoring your lower body. We wouldn't want to do that. And after a while, it would lead to some imbalance. We really need all 4 of these pillars in order to produce optimal human flourishing. So we have been on a mission to disseminate these insights, and specifically to disseminate strategies to cultivate well-being through this app and through other means as well. One of the things that we're particularly interested in is what we call micro-interventions. Micro-interventions are really short, just what it sounds like. It could be as short as 30 seconds. So imagine that you are about to go into an important meeting, or that if you're a teacher, you're about to go into your classroom. If you're a coach, you're about to meet a client. If you are an employee in an organization, you might be about to have a meeting with the team. And if you stopped for 30 seconds before that meeting and you did a simple appreciation practice where you thought about each of the people that you were going to meet and maybe think of something positive about them, reflect on how they have contributed to the greater good, how they have been a good team member, or how they've contributed to a class. Reflecting on these positive qualities can be such an important intervention that can change the tenor of a meeting, can change the tenor of an interaction, can increase the presence and vitality of a teacher who is about to meet and greet his or her students. So these micro interventions we think can be really powerful. In a study that was done in the United States with very low income African American students who were teenagers around age 15, they were given a micro intervention and the micro intervention in this case was what we call a values clarification intervention. They had to write about values that go beyond themselves that are important. They may be values such as helping their community, working for their family, whatever those values might be. And they wrote for a few minutes about these values. Another group that was randomly assigned to one of these 2 groups, another group simply wrote about what they did yesterday. And they did this on 4 separate occasions over the course of a year when they were 15 years old. So the total amount of time they spent on this was less than 1 hour. And these kids were followed for 10 years. And it was found that the children, the teenagers who went through this values micro-intervention were significantly more likely to graduate 10 years later from a 4-year college. Now that's really powerful evidence that demonstrates that these micro-interventions can really have impact. And so while we would love for more and more people to meditate in a more serious way, the reality is that most people are unlikely to do that. And so even just a few minutes a day, sprinkling the day with these micro-interventions can be enormously beneficial. One of the things that I often remind people of is that when human beings first evolved on this planet, none of us were brushing our teeth. And yet today, I'm sure all of you brush your teeth for at least a few minutes a day. Now, this is not part of our genome. We've learned to do this. And virtually every human being on the planet does this. And we do this because we recognize that this is important for our personal physical hygiene. I think most people, particularly attending this webinar, would agree that their minds are even more important than your teeth. And yet most people don't spend even as much time as we spend brushing our teeth, nourishing their mind. I have the conviction, based on scientific research, as well as my own personal experience, that if we spent even as short a time as we spend brushing our teeth, nourishing our mind, this world would be a different place. And so we are embarked upon various programs and strategies to bring this to different sectors in our society. We have worked with educators. We've worked with healthcare providers. We have worked with first responders, with police and with firemen. We have worked with people in business settings, corporate settings. We've worked with government officials. We've worked with school administrators. We've worked in higher education. All of these sectors are sectors where we believe these kinds of strategies will be really incredibly important. And one of our aspirations is to look at the distal outcomes that may be impacted by engaging in well-being training. What are some of those distal outcomes? Well, they include everything from physical health to productivity, creativity, longevity. These are all distal outcomes that we know are associated with well-being. And we believe that if we nurture well-being, we will see impact on these distal outcomes. Research shows that these strategies are cost-effective. A recent analysis from the National Institutes of Health in the United States shows that behavioral treatments for teenagers who are vulnerable to substance abuse, when they're teenagers, shows a massive return on investment. For every $1 US invested in the teenage years, there's an $18 to 1 return on investment by the time the children are age 25. So in just 10 years, there's an 18 to 1 return on investment, cost savings from all of the problems and chaos and suffering that is caused by substance abuse. So these kinds of strategies really are compelling on the bottom line, compelling economically. And it is penny wise and pound foolish, we say, not to invest in these. And we think that when more data of this kind is collected, it will help to push us over the tipping point so that these programs and strategies become incorporated into our education, into our work life, into our family life in ways that will elevate the well-being on the planet. Because I think most people would agree, particularly now that we have seen the devastating mental health sequela of the pandemic, that the trajectory that the world is on is not a particularly healthy or sustainable one. And we think of the cultivation of well-being as an urgent public health need. So I'm going to stop here and I will be happy to take questions, and I really appreciate everyone's attention. And sorry for the glitches in the slides, but sometimes I feel it's actually better to talk without slides so that you can just hear it unfiltered and not be distracted by the slides. So thank you all so much.
Thank you, Professor Davidson. I think you're right that in terms of this one, as you mentioned, awareness is something to start with, very important. And then I think just now during the talk, I think we can actually focus much more on what you are saying. And among the questions asked, one of them is asking that whether our brain actually stops changing after a certain age, or it keeps changing and never too late to learn new things, as you mentioned about this neuroplasticity.
Yes, that's a wonderful question. Thank you for asking that. And I have good news for you. The brain never stops changing. It always exhibits plasticity, and there's really good hard-nosed biological evidence to show this. Every human being grows new brain cells in certain parts of the brain every day. Every human being grows about 10,000 new brain cells each day, and those cells play a very important role in learning and memory and so forth. And we know that people are continuously generating those new cells until their last dying day. And so it's never too late. Now, having said that, there also are sensitive periods in development. This is why it's easier to learn a second language when you're younger. It's easier to learn a musical instrument when you're younger. And we believe it's also easier to nurture kindness when you're younger. And so it's not to say that we can't change throughout life, we can. But if we start early, we can get a larger impact for the same amount of effort.
Okay, thank you. I think this is actually also a very key message that culturing kindness, culturing awareness when they were young is also very important, in addition to their normal curriculum.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, the second question is actually, they are asking that what do we do when our brain starts with negative self-talk? I think you also mentioned about this negative self-talk before in your
Yes,
other
I
lectures.
did.
So they are asking that what should we do when we start realizing that the brain starts with some negative self-talk?
Yes, thank you for asking that question. And it's an important question. And I think, most of us have some negative self-talk. It's something that happens. The best approach to this is to do your best to recognize that they're simply thoughts, so that when we have negative thoughts, they're thoughts. And if we can see them as thoughts, we can put some space. We can create some opportunity so that they don't just hijack us, they don't grab us. So the next time you have negative thoughts, simply try to observe them and see them as thoughts. And that could be enormously helpful.
Okay, thank you. So that means it must start somewhere. Then you leave some space for our mind to be aware of ourselves. And that is a place that we can initiate the positive loop to regain back control. Am I right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thank you. Then there's a third question. One of the pillars you mentioned for well-being is purpose. What is your advice for those who are unable to find purpose in life?
Well, my advice for those who are unable to find purpose in life is this. I think that, first of all, we're living in a very challenging time. And so it's often very difficult. And I would begin by focusing on loved ones, on family, if you happen to have family. I would focus on those who might be suffering even more than you're suffering, and recognize that every human being shares the same wish to be happy and to be free of suffering. And when we focus on others, and when we appreciate what they have done, we can help to clarify our purpose, and really focus on values that are important to us. The values might be values of community, of family, of kindness. And so asking ourselves, what is really meaningful and important in my life, and getting to real basics can be very, very helpful. So even in the face of all of this conflict and suffering and the devastating problems that exist on the planet today, everyday life is filled with opportunities for positive interaction. And so opening our eyes to these positive interactions and trying to focus on something beyond ourselves can be very, very helpful.
Thank you. Thank you. Then the next question is actually, they would like to find out that you mentioned about these connections as one of the pillars of the well-being. So they would like to know that, is there any specific training that can help cultivate this kind of a connection?
Yes, there is specific training that can help cultivate this kind of connection. So we can actually do a 2-minute training right now. I can illustrate it. It's really the best way to respond to this question. So for those viewers who wish to take part, please sit in an upright posture. You can close your eyes if you're comfortable with that. If not, simply leave them open with a soft gaze. And let's start by bringing awareness into our bodies for a moment and simply settling, bringing our awareness to sensations in our body, bringing our awareness into this moment together. And now let's bring into our mind and into our heart a person who has been very helpful to you during this time of the pandemic. It might be your spouse, it might be a neighbor, it might be a coworker, it might be your child, whoever it is. It might be a person who works at a grocery store. It might be a healthcare provider. Bring a person into your mind and heart who has been helpful. And allow this quality of appreciation to develop. And maybe even reflect on how you might express your gratitude to this person the next time you see them. And you can wish them well by using a simple phrase that we can say in our own minds. We can say it silently. May you enjoy happiness and the causes of happiness. And may you be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. And we can extend these wishes as one way to express our gratitude to this person. May you enjoy happiness and the causes of happiness. May you be free of suffering and the causes of suffering. And so for those of you whose eyes are closed, please open them and we can re-engage. That simple practice changes your brain. We have demonstrated this on numerous occasions in the laboratory with hard-nosed biological measures. And this is a practice that can really help to warm the heart and to open the possibility of improved connection.
Okay, thank you. I think this is something very practical as well, and you can practice it every day. Just like when you mentioned just now about we normally do actually brushing our teeth and all that. So every day we should spend some minutes in actually cultivating our mind and raise our
Exactly.
awareness. Yeah. Okay. The next question is actually about just now you mentioned about the curriculum, kindness curriculum for the children. So they would like to know that when implementing this kind of curriculums and all that, do you all face any challenges?
I mean, there are always challenges, certainly, and there are different kinds of challenges in different circumstances. So there are going to be inevitable challenges. One of the challenges is to have the teachers on board, so to speak. And one of the things we recognize is that in order to deliver the kindness curriculum in a more compelling way, it's really essential that the teachers go through their own training before we bring this to the children. So that was one of the challenges that we confronted early on in that work. So there are going to be many challenges, but I think it's the evidence shows that it's very much worth persisting and overcoming those challenges.
Thank you. Thank you. And there's another question that is quite common. We mentioned about living at now, at present and all that. But sometimes people need to plan for future, or sometimes use a past experience to remind ourselves. So while saying that we are living at now, can we also do the planning and also thinking back in the past experience in this actually context?
I'm not sure I fully understand the question. So what is the question?
The question is actually sometimes when we, it's quite common that people say that we have to live at the present moment.
Yes.
Okay.
I see.
But
Yes.
living
Okay.
the present moment, whether we are allowed to actually plan for future, because there is something future, or think
Yeah.
about the past.
Yeah, of course. So it's the answer to that is actually very simple. If you want to sit and think, if it's important to do that, you sit and think about the future, and your present moment is about thinking about the future. The problem is that these thoughts come when we're doing other things, when we're trying to read, or we're interacting with a colleague, or we are talking to our children. Our minds are distracted. And so it's totally appropriate to sit and think about the future or reflect on the past, but let's bring our full attention to that, so that that is what we're doing. That is actually in the present moment. But when we're trying to read, or we're interacting with a colleague, and we're trying to think about the future at the same time, that's when it's a problem.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I think this is a short answer, but it's exact. I mean, this is how we should do. When we are planning, we live at now and planning for future.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. There's another question is that about these 4 pillars of well-being, then there are 4 of them. So is there any particular sequence that we must always start with awareness first, or when cultivating this one, it can be done in parallel?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. And the honest answer to that is we don't know. So this is an area where scientific research is going to be very important. We are doing that kind of research right now. We, in the app, we do prescribe an order, which is the order in which I presented them: awareness, connection, insight, and purpose. But we think for some people, it may be better to do it in a different order. And so one of the important scientific questions that we're addressing is, how can we figure out from characteristics of a person which order is optimal for that particular person? And maybe I'll just take one more question, and then unfortunately I will need to go.
So this will be the last question. So I think this question is about that. For sometimes, I think just now about negative self-talk, but of course you also mentioned about distraction, and then sometimes people feel depressions and all that. Does it always also goes back to the first stage of awareness and being mindful to help us to actually jump out from all this loop?
So again, I'm not sure what the question is here.
Okay, meaning that you see, sometimes people may have this easy to distract, to have distractions of mind, or sometimes without knowing anything, and they suddenly feel depression. Okay, so in this kind of process, which is basically dealing with our thoughts, daily thoughts, and all that. Does it mean that we always use the awareness in your first pillar to start actually helping ourselves to regain our own self-control, our mind?
I see.
Or how to actually by having mindfulness can help that? Yeah.
Yes. Well, strengthening awareness can really be very, very helpful. But the other pillar that's very relevant to this is the insight pillar. Insight is really about deeply understanding how our self-concepts influence our perception of reality. And by deeply understanding that, it helps to free us from the constraints that are imposed by this entity that we all construct that we call ourselves. So that's really, and I would encourage any viewer who's interested in this to please check out our app, because there are practices in the app, both in awareness and in insight, which are directly relevant to this question.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think that's all for all the questions. Thank you so much today to Professor Richard Davidson for your insightful actually sharing, and in fact, and also some practical sessions as well. That is really helpful. And I think one thing that we always must actually remind ourselves that every day spend some time for ourselves and cultivate our mind, and also follow the sharing just now of our 4 pillars of well-being. Thank you so much to Professor Richard Davidson. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the invitation.
Have
a good day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so thank you, Prof. Davidson and Prof. Yu. It was indeed a positive interaction for all of us. Okay, so we are actually grateful for the time and effort taken by both of them to share and discuss the insightful information and being attentive to all our inquiries. So I believe all of us can benefit immediately from the knowledge and research that has been shared. So thank you, dear participants and Facebook viewers, for allocating your time viewing us today. So on behalf of our organization, we would like to invite our audience to leave their valuable comments under the Facebook live stream of this event. You may click the link from the chat box at the bottom of your Zoom control panel. And not forgetting, those who are watching us live, please join us in the comment section, as your comments will motivate us to strive better. So before we end today, allow me to share our next 2 upcoming talks, which will be conducted tomorrow. From 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., we have Nourish Mental Well-being and Strengthening Resilience Amidst the COVID-19 Pandemic by our speaker from Germany. Then from 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m., we have a Mandarin talk, The Pathway of Meeting Our True Self. So let's mark our calendar for this weekend. And lastly, we would like to promote a little about Utah Hospital. It is a non-profit and self-sustained hospital. Your valued support and generous contribution to this hospital project will greatly benefit medical and health science students, to the community and the nation. So to support Utah Hospital project, kindly click in the link below www.utah.edu.my/UEF for donation. So thank you and see you in our next talk. Have a great Friday and awesome weekend ahead. Thank you.